this is something that I basically asked Scar. I was like, you know, what is your relationship with commentary right now? This is something we talked about for a few hours. It's something I've thought about. How much of my mind share do I want to make this commentary thing? And I will, you know, I will automatically say that anytime, you know, the discussions of commentator versus player, especially in the Melee scene, which I'm going to talk about, and this is something, you know, the backdrop of all of this is like Fiction and Junebug kind of roasting each other on the timeline. But my theory is basically that people want to be heard. People want to felt heard. And by heard, I mean people want to feel like their viewpoint is getting the time of day. I have a good example of this, of an extension, or not an extension, but an example of this theory in practice. When I was commentating with Mango and Vish at the Mango Nation tour on Saturday, Mango said something to the effect of like, Toph, I'm making Fox cool again. We're gonna get out of this phase where Fox is a character that is thought to be somebody whose top players are complainers. Right? I'm gonna bring cool Fox back, which was the case really when I started playing Melee like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Fox was not in the spot that he is today. Back then, I would say it was the Falcos that were the complainers. I think Fox, back then, Fox was a character that people wanted to believe was the best character, but didn't have the results in tournament, right? And so people would upplay, you know, there's downplaying and there's upselling or upplaying. People would upplay Fox a lot. Like Fox mains back then were big time believers. And they would say things like, no, Fox wins every fucking matchup. Fox is totally fucking broken. Like we just have to, you know, we have to work harder and we have to have better tech skill, but we can do it. We can win every single matchup. Like we're the best character by far, you know, and that was kind of the vibe in the Fox boards back then. Now people have moved very much in the other direction, right? And when you see people talk about, when you see Fox players talk about their place in the meta, if anything, it's usually, hey, actually Marth beats our character pretty hard. Whoa, Falco actually might even win on some stages. You know, even Sheik might be beating, you know, you see people representing the other side. And my theory, because I thought about this for a while, why is that? Why did people used to upplay Fox so much and now they downplay him so much? My theory is that back in the day, the dilettanti, if you will, the average viewpoint of the community was that Fox can't do it at the highest level. Fox can't win super majors because he's too physically demanding. Seriously, this is something people said. And so the viewpoint back then was Fox players wanted to feel, they wanted people to understand that they felt like, no, you guys don't get it. We can do it. You know, we're a better character in tournament even than you think we are. Now that everybody is on this, you know, or I'd say more like 2018, 2019, when Fox Marth hate was kind of at a peak, you know, before Leffen switched to Sheik and all this stuff. I think Fox players felt like the common opinion, the Reddit opinion, is that Fox is broken. And so people with the viewpoint of like, wait, Fox actually does have to struggle a bit, they didn't feel heard. They didn't feel like, you know, like they would say things like, man, Martha's actually a really fucking hard matchup. And people would be like, haha, yeah, right, buddy. You have a one frame shine that's invincible, blah, 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 you know. You know, I think what drives people to express the viewpoints they do and ask for the understanding basically of, it's like, hey, I need you to see my point, is that people want to be heard. People want to feel like they have an outlet for their opinions, right? That's something that I think when I look at what, for example, Ginger was saying about commentators and how top, let's even, I mean, I don't know if the tweets are even still there. I mean, maybe they were all taken down. You know, this was basically, and I'm not disagreeing with this. I want to come out and say I'm like super duper, I totally get where Ginger's coming from. Commentators sometimes have tens of thousands of people that will take what they say as truth. It can be really frustrating to listen to them sharing false narratives or incorrect information when you're one of the players affected. There's this kind of overarching sentiment that there's top players that are not happy, right? Not happy that their viewpoints are not being represented on commentary. And I can tell you from the commentator's perspective, as someone who I guess, not that I even identify as a commentator, I feel like to this day, I feel like I kind of stumbled upon it and I just do it because I enjoy it. But from the commentator's perspective, you know, sometimes it's like, man, as a commentator, you know, you are always sort of playing, like the things you say about the game are basically always going to be secondary to what a top player says. So if a top player ever says you're wrong, you kind of have to fall back, you know? And I think that's something that some commentators feel like it's almost like a quantity versus a quality problem, where top players are saying, well, commentators spend so much time on the mic, so they have a huge quantity of time that they can use to say, you know, establish the narratives they want to establish. The sense I get from a lot of commentators, Smash commentators, is they come out and they say things like, well, but, you know, nobody takes us seriously. Like, you know, top players, you know, you can say one little thing and it's taken as, you know, this gold standard of truth. And that's, you know, that's something that, you know, you're always going to be basically, you're not ever going to be taken as seriously in terms of what you say as a top player, right? That's something that I think I struggled with for the first couple of years where I was commentating. Scar as well, and I know it's something we talked about extensively yesterday. I remember the first couple of years when I was commentating, and it was really hard. It was really hard because every tournament, you know, I would go on, and you guys probably remember, I mean, well, some of you guys, I'm sure a lot of you guys are newer, but you know, there was the whole like Apex 2015 thing where I remember I got a lot of hate for this, where I basically, you know, I shit talked Tien. I said, just quit, bro, just quit. And from my perspective, I was just getting hype from my boy, Tafo. But, you know, it was funny, like a huge amount of people on Reddit basically came out and were like, yo, this Toph guy's fucking annoying, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of followed me into the next couple tournaments where if I ever looked at Twitch chat, people were kind of memeing on me and they were like, this commentator should just quit. You know, there was a shitload. I mean, you guys, you know, you joke about it like it was a dope moment. And I think retroactively, I can look back on it and say like, yeah, it was kind of a dope and memorable moment in the community. But for 2 or 3 years, you know, I would open Twitch chat or I would open Reddit and it was fucking, it would be like, this fucking Toph guy needs to just quit. Like, you know, where's fucking Prog and D1 or Homemade Waffles and Phil or, you know, whoever the established guys were that came before me, right? And this is something I think every commentator goes through. And I think what really pulled me back into it was Scar, and we would frequently have, and this was honestly, this was how we became a lot closer as friends, because we were commentating together, me and Scar, before we really became close friends. Like we were commentators first before we became friends. And we would talk and we kind of established these mantras, which were like, who are we commentating for? Well, we're commentating for 1, each other, and 2, we're commentating for the fans. So we would constantly remind ourselves, almost like gym buddies. And I think establishing who you're commentating for is really, really important. Because otherwise you lose motivation really quickly every time you see another Reddit thread or what have you. You know, every time you look at Twitch chat and people are talking shit. And I think this is something that I do want to represent the voice of the commentator here. You know, when people basically come out and say like, you know, a commentator goes on the mic and says, you know, and is talking to tens of thousands of people who are going to take what they say as truth. I mean, if you really look at Twitch chat for someone who's not me or Scar or Vish or someone who's not super duper established, there's actually just a lot. It is, I don't think it is the case from what I've seen for a lot of the newer guys that it's 10,000 people taking what they say for is truth. What I see are a lot of people being like, who the fuck are these people? Get these motherfuckers off the mic. It's definitely a struggle that I had a talk with Walt about this because I saw kind of what people were saying in the wake of SmashCon, and even Slime made that tweet. I think the reason this is such a sore topic, and I think the reason that every time this gets brought up, the people involved get heated. So the players and the commentators and whatever. It's not about Fiction or Junebug or Jinder or anybody. I think the reason people get so heated is because people don't feel heard. People don't feel like the other side understands their struggle. I would like to think I'm over it, but I guess I'm not, because I see this shit on my timeline. I'm still like, what the fuck are these kids talking about? And I still want to get involved, right? I still have this demon, the Twitter demon, the social media demon that wants us to engage, you know, give attention to stupid shit on the internet. You know, that comes out and it taps you on the shoulder and says, yo, you should say something. And I think the reason this is the case is because ultimately people don't feel heard. You know, when Ginger says things like, you know, top players are frustrated because commentators say things about them that affect them, what he's basically saying is we don't feel heard. And it's the same way for a commentator that might see this and say, well, bro, we don't have 10,000 people taking what we say as truth. We got 9,000 people saying, who the fuck is this commentator? This guy sucks. Get Scar in here. I don't know. I don't want to sound like hokey and cringe or whatever, but I feel like it's a lack of empathy on both sides. And it's just like, I look at this shit and I'm just like, bro, neither one of you guys really gets it. Neither one of you guys is really looking at the whole picture here. And it's ridiculous because it's Melee. And what do I mean by that? The reason I say it's ridiculous because it's Melee is because more than any other scene I've been a part of, Melee commentators are just players. Who are the top commentators? Like literally, who are the most established commentators? Scar, Homemade Waffles, Phil, me, Vish. I just named 5 people who could reasonably get like top 64 at a major. Okay, in my case, I keep getting 65th, but you know what I'm saying. Junebug literally got 13th at Double Down with his month-old Dr. Mario. You know what I'm saying? Melee has more top player or strong player, whatever you want to call a top player, you know. Melee is more strong player representation in its cadre of commentators than probably any other competitive gaming scene. I see these arguments and I'm like, why does this keep happening in Melee? Like, it doesn't make any sense. There should be more in common. And I actually think I have an answer for this, but Seriously, there should be more in common between the player viewpoint and the commentator viewpoint in Melee than any other game, including Smash Ultimate. In Melee, we're also entering tournaments. I remember back when I was playing fucking Overwatch, I remember running into Sembler in Overwatch, and I remember stomping Sembler. You know, Sembler was one of the Overwatch League commentators, and he's from CSGO and all this stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, casters in other games are not as good as casters in Melee. This was a thought that I had, and it was ironic at the time, because at the time there was a lot of discourse in the Melee community about how you need to be good at the game to commentate well. And I remember thinking, like, well, shit, I mean, on one hand, you got all these Melee players and Melee fans saying things like, you got to be good at the game to commentate well. But on the other hand, these same people are saying things like, Smash commentary sucks and other esports scenes commentary is way better. And I've seen how good their casters are at their respective games, and most of them are hard stuck plat. There's a clear paradox here. Like, the standard viewpoints do not line up. And these were opinions that a lot of people had. And I was just like, well, one of these viewpoints is just wrong, but it seems like the majority of people believe both of these things. And as I was talking to Scar yesterday, and we were talking about it, and he was basically saying, like, Toph, I feel like I need to be good at Melee for people to take me seriously, and I feel like I don't want to commentate until I'm good at Melee again. Like, if you need to feel like you're good at Melee to commentate, then we have to get you good at Melee so you'll commentate again. You know, and I wanted to tell him, like, Bobby, you don't need to be that good as a player for people to take you seriously. You know, people love you, and I wanted to say that to him, but the reality is I couldn't, because I know exactly where he's coming from. I feel the same way. My theory is that, unlike the traditional FGC, I think Melee players in particular, but also just wider Smash, we almost became esports, right? Like, we almost became a super legitimate esport. We feel like we tasted esports success. And I think in some sense, that mindset, I have this sense that, like, Melee top, not even top players, but aspiring players want to be able to make Melee a full-time thing in a way that the FGC doesn't. Like, a lot of FGC top players know that going full-time, whatever their fighting game is more or less a pipe dream. And I feel like in Smash, we kind of want to have our cake and eat it too. Like, I think a lot of Smash fans want to be, not want to be esports, but, like, I feel like because we tasted it, we want to hold ourselves to that standard. I'm looking at this and I'm like, I just think it's funny that this comes up and people think there's this dichotomy between top players and commentators, when in reality, if you look at Melee compared to, I will just say 95% of gaming scenes, maybe more than like 99%, we have more top player rep or strong player rep in our commentary cadre than any other scene. Even Blur, like, you know, like, we actually enter tournaments. Here's the thing. I think it's, I don't know if Fiction's still here, but I think you're right. I do think that the way this started, people took it out of, I think people kind of twisted what happened a little bit and made it more about players versus commentators. I will say this, I am more responding, if I'm responding to anybody, if I'm responding to anything on Twitter right now, I'm really just basically responding to this kind of viewpoint, like that. And again, I don't even necessarily disagree with Ginger per se. I get where he's coming from. Junebug kind of lashed out randomly. Here's what okay, so this, first of all, yes, Junebug did lash out randomly. Second of all, I construed Junebug's lashing out as way more like a player roasting another player than a commentator roasting a player. I construed it as, when I read what Junebug said, which I thought was a little bit below the belt, but whatever, I think Junebug is just down to clown. He's just a silly guy. I felt like it was way more like, hey bro, don't talk about me like I'm just a commentator. I'm hella nice, you know, I'm nice on the sticks, whatever, basically. That was the vibe I got, which I think is ironic because then people turn it into this commentator versus fucking player thing. And I was kind of like, well, is that really what happened? I don't think that's what happened at all. At the end of the day, I think most Melee commentators, if you ask any of us, we all kind of identify ourselves as players. Let's put it this way. I spend way more time practicing Fox ledge dashes than I do preparing to commentate the next major. Is this bad? Maybe. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I'm probably a better player than I am a commentator. And I bet a lot of people that you guys consider to be commentators would say similar things. I play way more unranked or hit up players to play or practice ledge dashes and Uncle Punch or practice tech chases and Uncle Punch. I do that probably 95%. It's like a 95-to-5 ratio. Anything else I want to talk about? Yeah, so for me, you know, the only thing I will say is this, like, I want to, at this point, I'm really just talking to the other commentators, but this is something that I know people are going through. I know the newer commentators feel. I don't know. I don't know how many of you guys identify as, probably very few of you. Probably no one. In fact, probably no one in this chat. So maybe I'm just saying this into the ether. But I want people like Walt and people like Radar and people who are up and coming to know that I think they're doing a bang up job. And I think when people on Reddit say stupid shit, I think they're not being as empathetic as they should be. And I think nobody, including Super Smash Bros. Melee players, I don't think they know how hard it can be when people on the internet are dragging your name through the mud. And you know, you gotta motivate yourself intrinsically. You know, you gotta commentate for yourself, for your co-commentator, for your select group of fans. That was me and Scar's thing. Commentate for each other, and we commentate for the fans. If there's, because here's how human nature works. Here's how human nature works. I think everyone can relate to this. I don't think this is just a commentator thing, but this is something that you get reminded of frequently as a commentator. It's the classic phenomenon where 9 people compliment you. There's webcomics, but you guys probably have seen the webcomic. There's a famous webcomic where it's this phenomenon, but 9 people pay you a compliment, and then one person's like, hey, you suck, bro. And then you're like laying in bed that night, and then which comment are you thinking about as you're falling asleep? Are you thinking about the compliments? No, those have all rolled off you a long time ago. But that one dude who was like, hey, you suck, like that voice is like ringing out in your head. You know what I'm saying? To the Waltz out there, you know, to the Radars out there, to people who feel like people are being so toxic to me. Yeah, we've all been through it. Me and Scar have been through it. Brad and Phil have been through it. We've all been fucking through it. Sageham's been through it. In some ways, I'm thankful that it's something I had to work through as a, you know, in 2014, 2015, 2016. This is all to say that I would love it if this whole player versus commentator thing just got buried in the dirt, because it doesn't make any sense.